I'm Mary Siegel. I am the product sales manager for the Northeast, specifically New York, Mass, and Rhode Island. And I've worked with a lot of you in the past. And my good friend Caroline suggested this town hall. So I arranged to have our product management team for our government documents portfolio to present and talk about our business model and really just to answer your questions because I know there's been a lot of them over the last month and a half or so since we made our announcement. And I have worked with a lot of you in that time, but this is a really good forum because you can kind of go right to the source. So I don't know if Susan Bochern has dialed in yet, but this I do have Andrew Loss, my colleague from Clarivate, who is the product manager for congressional. Some of you, I should say, some of you I know have worked with Kathy Johnson, and she retired in January. And it kind of passed the torch to Andrew, who's amazing. So, and then we'll also be joined by Susan Bochern, who is our Vice President of Product Management. Andrew, do you want me to hand it over to you? And I'll
Yeah,
ping Susan
sure.
and make sure she's able to get in.
Thanks a lot, Mary. Yeah, I just got an email from Susan. I just forwarded her the Zoom, so she might be on here in just a moment or two. Yeah,
Great.
thanks so very much. Yes, Kathy was my boss for I don't know 10, 15 years, something like that. She was a great mentor, and I, I haven't talked to her in a couple of weeks, but she was enjoying her retirement. That's for sure. Her well deserved. So yes, Susan will be on in just a moment. I was going to focus on um, mainly the government document side of things, and Susan was going to uh, talk about the overall program that we've implemented. But I'll go ahead and start on until she gets on. Um, Let me just remove this side over here. So what we've introduced here is a major change in the way that we've been that we're going to be offering our subscription products. Hopefully, Susan will come on here in a moment because this one side right over here, ProQuest Government Documents, is my experience for the last 30 years or so.
Hi,
And
Andrew.
hi, Susan.
Hi, everyone. I'm on. Sorry, I didn't have the invite.
Well, we're just on this first one, and I just started introducing it, Susan. So if you wanted
Okay.
to take
You want
over,
me to take over?
yeah,
Sure.
I will run the slides. Just tell me where to go for the next one.
Okay, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Susan Bochern, and I'm Vice President of Collections and Product at ProQuest Clarivate. And thank you all for joining. We really appreciate it. And first, I just want to say thank you, for all your support of us and over the years and the support that you give us, and really, really appreciate it. And we really do apologize for kind of our abrupt announcements that we made back in March, and our intention definitely was not to cause disruption within the academic community. And we did do some of that. So really apologize. I know Barb Einstein and Oren by Erie do apologize for some of the way we made announcements and how abrupt they were. So really apologies for that, and thank you for your understanding, or at least staying with us, staying with us now, and really appreciate it. And for this call, I can't see anybody right now because I can see a screen, but please raise your hand if you have any questions as we move along, because it's some material that we wanted to give you an overview of kind of our thinking and the changes that we've made to the portfolio. And today we're really focused on collections and not books. Books is, we can talk about books, and that's not my forte. It's our colleague's forte in terms of the books portfolio. But today, it's really about collections and really around our ProQuest digital collections, our ProQuest historical newspapers, and our ProQuest government documents collections. And just to kind of, back up a little bit, at ProQuest, I've been at ProQuest 14 years. Andrew came from when ProQuest purchased the GovDocs group from LexisNexis about, 14 years ago, I guess. And since then, we've purchased Alexander Street and some others. So it's really been an evolution for us as well. And if you can think about the change that we're making, for about 20 years, and for the 14 years I've been here, we've been producing products as what we used to call PALs, or one-time collections. And really that was a process of releasing about 30-ish per year across primary sources and historical newspapers and government documents. And in that time, we'd produce maybe 25, 30 a year. So over a 25-year period, that was, 700 products. And they were purchased individually as we would license and source content from source providers, clear the rights. And we would package them up into collections and then make them for sale and for sale with ownership. And that we did literally for 25 years. And essentially, it was like a publishing model. And it really wasn't a subscription framework model. And as we were working post-COVID, working with a lot of our customers and talking to them, a lot of them were saying, well, ownership isn't as important. We need more access. So then we did develop other models. I think it was 2018 was the first year on access and build. That was kind of an evidence-based model. And we had some customers who took us up on that model, and others said, not for us. So that's, fair enough. It's your choice, not ours. But when we looked at the upfront cost, particularly during and post-COVID, to acquire the content, because a lot of the sources were shut down, it became, a barrier to source the content and digitize it and provide it. And also customers did purchase during that time, but post-COVID, once some of that money went away, decided, to move to different models, or we were actually getting requests for subscriptions. And because we had our subscriptions already in our aggregated disciplines that were ProQuest Central, and really our content that was more serials focused in journals, we looked at our portfolio and looked across the portfolio of something like 4,000 products and SKUs that the company had accumulated since the year 2000, and really looked at way can we streamline this process, because we're becoming difficult to understand across the portfolio. And part of it was, frankly, our own making, our own doing, because we had different divisions, creating products and then kind of just releasing them all together and not really putting them into a framework. And also when we looked across it, when we had these individual databases, essentially, when we looked at the new capabilities from a user standpoint, they really couldn't cross-search across all of them. Or if we needed to provide any additional tools for discovery or cross-search or metadata or indexing that was across the portfolio, we really had pieces that were siloed. So this way, by pulling it all together into more of a subscription framework, it really gives us the flexibility to create much better user experiences And then when we add some of our academic, AI or other tools at the document level, we can really apply that across our portfolio versus we really couldn't do that when we had individual databases. If we go to the next slide, please. And the other thing is a lot of our customers had a lot of wish lists with these 700 products. And we could never really fulfill the wish lists, and they were expensive, frankly. So we've really looked at, if you look across the full portfolio here, this is the full text division within ProQuest now. And it includes on the left side our what we call our discipline products that are really more journal based and serials based. And those roll up and nest up into ProQuest Central. And then when you look on the more middle right side of the screen, these are products that we've nested into 8 disciplines and also government documents and historical newspapers. So it's a simplified structure. We hope it's easier to understand. And also we've now nested content. 100% of those 700 individual databases are included in this new structure. So the content remains intact. We're not taking apart archives. They exist underneath each of these disciplines. And this mega structure. So please, be secure in that we have the content. We're not disambiguating it. We're keeping it. And we'll actually be adding additional archival content as we move forward. We can give you much broader access at a better price, frankly, and more, affordable subscription models. And then again, the enhanced capabilities that I mentioned. Next slide, please. Some of the questions that we've gotten, and please raise your hand on questions, or if you'd like after this meeting, we're happy to do an FAQ if you have questions, and we'll answer them either online here or afterwards, whatever's most convenient for you. And as I mentioned, we're really looking at nesting up the 700-ish products. They are retained, and we will host them in perpetuity. So anyone who's purchased them is that perpetual archive model. You keep the content, and we keep the content, and we will continue to host it and provide it to your users who search it. And any additional products that we launched as one-time PALs, we have some of the products we launched, for example, in 2024 that we're still continuing to complete the content in them. We are completing the content in them, so we're making you whole on everything that you've purchased. And they are for sale through purchase throughout this year. And anyone who is interested in content delivery, we laugh internally. We have an F1 code. It just happened to come up in the alphabet after D. So our tech team's named it the F1 code. So we laugh internally, but it is that for content delivery if you choose to receive content. And that includes a PDF, OCR, if the content has OCR, and the metadata that is associated with it. But again, we will continue to host it. There's no change there. Excuse me, my throat went hoarse today. And then we also have our continuing service fees, and they come in 2 flavors for customers who have purchased content from us. Those that are open file and those that are closed file. Closed file means the content had a beginning and an end date. And the open file is more of a scroll model where the content has an open date. And that's 38 of our historical newspapers and 8 of our magazines. And then Andrew will talk about our government products. There's 9 products that we're rolling into our 5-year rolling file. And you will retain access and ownership to those products moving forward. And we can go into some detail about that a little later on in the presentation and take your questions there. And as far as our new content roadmap, we do have, we will be digitizing. Now it will be smaller in size in terms of the amount of content that we'll be digitizing each year, but we will still continue to digitize primary source materials and make them available in our new subscription framework. And they will be multi-formatted, and we'll continue to do topic pages and to have text and audio and video added into our content subscriptions and collections moving forward. And they'll all be available for navigation, search, browsing, etc. And they'll also be in our Primo, Summon, Discovery. We did do a little bit of improvement already on our landing pages and that'll be clear to you on the next slide, where we have some of our collections that have a combination of content that resides on the ProQuest platform and also the Alexander Street platform. And we've made the landing pages, blended the lists together of the products. And so the user, as they come in and search, they're automatically authenticated over to the ProQuest, from the ProQuest platform over to the Alexander Street platform. We do have our government content separately on a government platform that Andrew will articulate later on. And we kept it there because it really has a unique experience and UI that goes with our government content. And we will be adding additional tools like the AI research assistant at the document level. And we can talk more about that. And then with our text and data mining tool, TDM Studio, it goes across our entire portfolio. And we are using some AI tools in TDM Studio as well that individual researchers are using now in a beta test. And then we have our new pricing moving forward that actually is more favorable than you might think. And so that's actually a benefit. We go to the next slide, please. So this looks like a lot of coming back to this kind of view underneath, but it's one click down, and it shows at the collection level underneath that resides within disciplines. So again, the primary sources and our government content is included within the collection level, and also kind of rolled up in a meta structure just for clarity at the discipline level. And if you can see GovDocs in green here with 6, you can still buy some products that are below the level, but we're showing at that collection level. And then there's 5 larger collections that roll up into GovDocs like Congressional. And Congressional will update as it updates now. There's no change. And Andrew can answer specific questions there. The same thing with our Insight, products of Supreme Court regulatory and legislative insight, regulatory insight products. Any questions so far? And I can't see the chat. I apologize. I see little flashing signs here. I think Caroline Walters, you sent a question. So all the Insight products will be at yes. Nothing really changes other than kind of the commercial model, and the Insight products and our government products If you look at the Insight products and then our US congressional products, those are all updated daily and those continue. And with the congressional base still stays a subscription as it does now. Nothing changes. Nothing changes in the Insight products, except where we have a kind of starting in 2025, a way to roll you forward on a 5-year subscription in which you get ownership, and that doesn't change. So all of that remains the same. And then this slide just shows it's our roadmap for 2025. So if we can see under the government products, ongoing for hearings, serial set bills, committee reports, research reports, etc. Ongoing for all of our Insight products, executive branch products, UK government products, statistical. Nothing changes there. And you can own, going forward on that rolling file, still own congressional. And Andrew will explain that in our Insight products. Yes, the law
Shall
school.
I take over?
Yeah. Do you want to? Then we can go deep dive into government and then have time for Q&A. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should take maybe 10 minutes or something like that.
Perfect.
Andrew, can you address one of you address the model where the main library and the law library have separate congressionals and how that will end up being handled? Because that's a question on the chat, but it might already be a part of your presentation. So I just wanted to mention to roll that in. Thanks.
It's not, but we'll address that after I kind of introduce both the different subscription models here for this. So I'm the product manager for all our government documents offerings here, and we have, as Susan was talking about, we have over 100 individual databases that we've really simplified down. So we had a legacy of over 100 these 100 individual databases that were created over the course of 25 years, and this convoluted array of offerings, made sense as they were being digitized and published online, starting with the serial set that I worked on in 2003. But they've resulted in lots of customer gaps and confusion, and it's been rationalized and simplified into just 6 subscriptions that you see right here: the ProQuest government documents, then the UK, the US government insight, US congressional collection, executive branch policy documents collection, and the statistical collection. There are also 9 additional kind of lower level collection subscriptions that I'll cover in the next slide, but these are all done at a very affordable price point. It allows for easy gap fill and allows all libraries to have access to the largest archive of the US and UK government documents, covering from today all the way back to 1660 with the UK parliamentary papers, covering 100 million pages, 16 million documents. And even as a current worry, I think, by librarians that have spoken to me is their continued access to official documents, even if they're removed from government websites. So we have been very diligent and proactively acquiring press releases on the executive agency side, guidance and policy documents, for example, which are particularly at risk, and many other content types. So librarians can be assured that even if federal government websites are scrubbed, we'll have it. And as Susan mentioned, our government platform has unique research tools designed for the exploration of government documents. This next one here shows how all the content rolls up into the higher level subscriptions. So there's the overall ProQuest government document subscription, and then the dark green up there are also separately subscribable as well. You've got the UK government collection, the congressional collection, the government insight collection, executive branch documents collection, and statistical collection. Now, the light green there are the next level down subscription offerings. And then the gray down there shows all the content that rolls up into those different collections. And at what level an institution subscribes to will depend on library holdings and gaps. For example, those who have purchased, say, 18th to 20th century parliamentary papers, for example, and I just use that because it's the simplest. the 21st century subscription might make the most sense in light green there. But if they lack the House of Lords and the public petitions to Parliament, then the UK government collection might make the most sense for them. So, and the pricing with all this will take into account their current PAL holdings and any CSFs or subscriptions that they currently pay. So it's kind of all rolled up in the price there, and they get credit for the PAL holdings that they currently have. Now, each of the Insight products can also be purchased as separate subs. So with Regulatory Insight Collection, for example, it'll include the historic and the guidance and policy modules. So if you're lacking any of that, then that'll be an easy way to fill in those gaps. And for the Supreme Court Insight Collection, it'll include all the cert denied modules as well. So it kind of rolls these up and it makes it really easy to do gap filling. And with the U.S. Congressional Collection, they'll have the ability just to subscribe to the congressional and executive base as they do now, and what they currently pay for the base subscription and any CSS that they currently pay would also, if they decide to get the Congressional All Collection, which is in the dark green there, then that would take into account what they've paid in the past. And under the Executive Branch Documents Policy Collection, you have all modules of the Trends and Policy Collection and new modules as they come out. We have one on U.S. tax policy and the IRS coming out in the fall. And then the Executive Branch Documents Great Series and Reports Collection as well. But within that U.S. Executive Branch Documents Collection, all the Executive Branch documents back to 1789 to 1952, then the Great Series and Reports, and all the Trends and Policy modules all roll up into that top level green one there. And with the Statistical Collection, Statistical Insight and the StatAb in the U.S., all editions back to 1878, I believe, are available as separate sellable units as well. Now, only for 2025, we'll be offering individual PAL purchases. And so a number of these items here for the 2025 updates released before we made the announcement. So we'll allow institutions to fill in any gaps in their holdings in an ownership model. And not only they'll be able to purchase the 2025 annual updates for the core congressional offerings and for the 2025 updates for legislative, regulatory, and regulatory insight and guidance and policy material, but also all the other collections that were released before 2025 are available for this year as well. However, if an institution's interested in continuing their ownership of content, we'll continue to offer our existing sub-to-own models. So essentially, if an institution subscribes for 5 consecutive years, they'll gain ownership of those 5 years of content at the end of that term. And then it'll be ongoing as well. So you've got 2025 to 2029, 2030 to 34, and then ongoing after that as well. Essentially, there's this top-level ProQuest Digital Complete Perspective. We call it Digicom Pro. It gives access to all the core content, the hearings, House and Senate documents and reports, bills and resolutions, committee prints, CRS reports, GAO reports, CBO, and a whole host of other material as well. And then there's the ProQuest Legislative and Regulatory Insight with Guidance and Policy subscription, sub-to-own. And then you can also subscribe to just Legislative Insight and own that after 5 years as well. The Legislative and Regulatory Insight without the Guidance and Policy, or just the Regulatory Insight that includes Guidance and Policy. So those are all separate sub-to-owns as well. And then with Supreme Court Insight and Cert Denied, we'll start adding that content when the next Supreme Court term starts in the fall. And that'll be a 5-year sub-to-own, and it'll also include Cert Denied as well. Now, there are a number of institutions that already have parts of this sub-to-own arrangement going back well before 2010. So most of them have the Congressional Hearings Digital Collection Perspective, and we're going to continue to service that. If they want to renew, they can. And over the years, every 5 years, they've gotten ownership of those 5-year blocks of content. Same thing with the combo product that some institutions have access to. The hearings, Congressional Research Digital Collection, which has the CRS reports, committee reports, GAO, CBO, all that stuff. And then the serial set. So that's a combo. And then there's a serial set only perspective as well that some institutions have had for many years, since 2010 or 11. And then there's the CRDC, Congressional Research Digital Collection perspective. Now, those are all going to be available for sub to own going forward. Plus, if customers want to roll them into the Digicom Pro, the ProQuest Digital Complete perspective, and be able to have ownership for all the core content, they can. And finally, I just wanted to leave everyone with a couple of things in closing here. We have that top level ProQuest Government Documents collection subscription that gives full access to everything at an affordable price that takes into account all past PAL purchases, any CSFs that they're currently paying, and subscriptions as well. And then we have the lower level subscriptions to best tailor and suit an institution's needs. We'll still be offering the 5-year sub to own offerings, and for those that are still interested in ownership. And the ProQuest platform, as you all know, is really designed for government publications in mind. They're bespoke search forms, topic pages, and search segments that support research and teaching with government documents across many different academic disciplines. And it is the largest archive of the U.S. Legislative, regulatory, and Supreme Court documents, UK parliamentary papers, plus U.S. and global statistics. Okay, and that's all for my overview on that. I see that Carolyn asked, why is Supreme Court Insight or Cert Denied offered as sub to own? Well, there are a number. That's a very good question. There are a number of folks who have purchase the yearly updates to Supreme Court and Supreme Court Insight. And we wanted to make it on an ownership basis. And since we're not going to be offering that going forward as a distinct annual update, we wanted to make sure that that institutions who wanted to continue that ownership model had the ability to do that. So we rolled up Cert Denied and Supreme Court Insight into one offering, so that they would be able to continue their sub to own, or they'd be able to continue their ownership model. If that.
Sorry, Andrew, thanks for that. I had a typo in my question. I originally thought I asked why wasn't it offered as a sub to own, but I guess it will be once you have the content.
Mhm.
Yeah, once the term starts up again. Great to see you again, Carolyn. I think we saw each other at AAL last year. Anyway, yes, we decided to roll that in with Supreme Court Insight just as one offering, just because with the number of, it's becoming more and more important, I think, with the Supreme Court to see what cases not only were heard by the Supreme Court, but the ones that weren't heard, since they get 8,000 petitions a year and only hear 60 to 80 cases a year. We thought it would be better just to start bundling all that together and simplifying the offerings for folks. Did that answer your question?
So it sounds like you're not going to offer that until the next session starts.
Yeah.
We'll have a whole year's worth of content to offer as a subscription. I guess I'm a little confused about the timeline of, in the rollout of content as time goes on. If it's
right. Well, right now it's the 2024-25 term. So that had already released. So if one wants to purchase a PAL just of that term, they can update their holdings in that way, and then go on to the 5-year sub to own for the 2025-2026 term once that starts in October.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
And, Sorry. Caroline, as I've been working through doing pricing with different law libraries, I've kind of been thinking of like a July start date is the beginning of a fiscal year. So even if you had your Supreme Court start on July 1st, you'd still be buying those updates within that same fiscal year, was kind of how I was thinking of it. And I'm assuming that, you know, most libraries usually go with either a July or a January start date. At least that's been my experience. But I think it might work because you haven't bought the 2025-26 isn't available yet, and so you're up to date. I mean, not everybody, I'm just talking you particularly. You're up to date through 24-25, and then come July 1st, it's your new fiscal year, and then SCOTUS will, their new session starts within that same year, is sort of how I'm seeing it, but that makes sense.
Yeah, and can I jump in? Our goal is it depends on if you want to own or subscribe, and essentially in this new model, I mean, you can true up this year if you've got big gaps in the past from years of coverage, or the really a good way of doing this is the ProQuest, GovDocs all, and you'll be surprised about how good the pricing is for subscriptions. We've had our pricing team really help us out here in terms of making this, more affordable. So really, and we made it flexible so that you can work with, let's say, Mary, who's on the phone, and our other sales specialists to work to see what works best for you. If you want to buy the PALs this year and true up and then move forward on the ownership model, or if you just want a subscription to all of it and you don't care about ownership, each customer is a little bit different, and we can work with you to do that, whatever works.
I do have a question about the ownership model.
Yeah.
Learning that that the data is actually stored on Amazon Web Services was a surprise to me, and because it's not on Portico.
Well, Portico's is on Amazon Web Services too, so let's just.
Portico has a layer of discoverability on top of it that I believe AWS does not have. I mean, I'm just trying to
yes and
think
no.
of why would we want to own something that wasn't actually discoverable? If for heaven forbid ProQuest goes under, I mean that would to me be the primary reason to own
a couple things. Well, we are talking to Portico. We just put our ebooks into Portico. We are talking to them now, and among others. Here's our challenge. We're so large that let's put it this way, our nearest competitor is about 27% of our size. So we're working with it's a challenge for them as well. And particularly, so it is something we're talking to them and others about, both for preservation and for discovery. When our version, at least now, I'm not a technical person, so I'll tell you this, at least when more technical people tell me, is that our version of AWS Cloud and number 3, and we're distributed around the world in terms of the content and distributed in terms of hosting. And then there's a hierarchy of levels of security that it won't go under. So one of the things we've talked to on the preservation side with Portico and others is that because we're so large and because it's not just the sending the content over, but it's also the updating it. It's not really environmentally friendly because you're making a copy of 400 terabytes of content plus some that grows. So we're looking at ways to say, can we keep it there, make it discoverable, and then there would be like an administrative role like that from Portico or others that would go in and make sure it's still there, it's still stood up. If ProQuest ever goes under, or there's a trigger event or something, then, which shouldn't happen because that means AWS goes under, but that could happen, Then we would have it, and we would have they would act like an administrator role to say, yes, they would audit the content still there. It would be audited by customer entitlements. Yes, the content's still there, and then it would move over and be available. So that is something we're in discussions now. We are looking at it now, and we're also looking at it from just making sure we all have preserved copies, especially if federal websites and others are going down now, or they're taking content off. Is there a way that we can make sure we're excuse me, preserving that content? So would like your feedback on that, and we are having those discussions now. And it's a fair point. I get it.
I have other questions, but I will let other people jump in before. I don't want to hog it all the time.
Well, here's one on the chat. If you're up to date on Insight product and then start the 5-year sub to own the next fiscal year, does that mean 5 years from now you will own the next consecutive year's worth of content? The next year's new content, the first year to the content you subscribe to. The way the 5-year sub to own is after 5 years, then of subscribing, then you own that 5-year chunk of content. And so we go in behind the scenes then and turn those on to PAL status behind the scenes. And then the next 5 years, assuming you renew it at that point, then that would start for the next 5 years, that next 5-year chunk. So after 5 years, you get all 5 years. Does that make sense? I hope I answered that. Susan, we probably should answer this question, the first question that came up by Mary. Our law school has a separate subscription from the main university, partly because we purchased archival slices for law school only. Does this change?
So again, it's a legacy thing, as I understand, and some law schools in the past, there are two pieces of it, as I understand, and Andrew, please jump in. Some of it was that law schools wanted to pay separately, and in some cases, law schools have a separate IP range than the main campus. A lot of them are all merged now into one, but some wanted to buy it separately and have it separate. We can go either way. So it's been a legacy situation, and some law schools are buying through indirect through a consortium, and some buy direct at the campus, and the campus buys a different way. And that is really your choice of how you want to buy. But I think that's largely how a lot of the legacy, both law and main, I think it's mostly, isn't it for either congressional base? I think it's for the congressional base. Am I correct there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Mary, is that something you want to address from your viewpoint?
For me, no, it was a librarian who asked that, but it's down in the chat, so I can't remember who asked it. But I think the questions come up
in the chat.
Yeah, when we've been talking about possible migration to the ProQuest government documents is when it comes up. And I can tell you that if you choose to get the big subscription government documents, both of those separate subscriptions would both migrate in, and you would have to set up your cost sharing with your main library. We won't split the cost of ProQuest government documents. So it's different at every pair that I've worked with. Some bill each other, some don't want to have anything to do with each other. But I can talk to you on an individualized basis on this, or my colleagues who cover your account, which would probably mostly be either myself or Andy Gross. Also, Susan, Suffolk is asking if we can agree upon an agreed upon increased renewal rate for the sub to own, so ahead of time. So yes, I want to take the sub to own, but let's do a 5-year. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the sub to own. If you do sub to own, are you locked in for those 5 years? what if your budget gets slashed in the middle of that sub to own agreement?
Well, we can work with you there. I mean, that it's been a model that we've had for a long time, and that seems to work. And it essentially, it also, otherwise, what happens is every single year we have to create a new product. So in other words, if it stop starts, that's why we're trying to true everyone up to a 20, and then everyone would start with 2025 forward, because if not, for every single product, we have to start a new subscription year to make that model work. And it's hundreds of product codes on our back end. And sometimes we found that our customer service team doesn't see it for a customer and doesn't turn it on if it's year by year. And so it really helps us and helps you to know that that content's there. We all start with a certain date. It's in our system properly. It's turned on properly in OneAdmin. It's turned on properly in Discovery, instead of this checkerboard process that we've been in years past. And it's literally all the variations that Andrew just showed are year by year, checkerboard by checkerboard, product by product. And it creates a lot of mistakes, to be honest with you. And this way, we're assured and you're assured that it'll go through our system and be turned on properly at year end, also for Discovery. And we don't have to, and you don't have to, worry about the individual years of billing of the checkerboard of the different products. So it kind of makes that whole buying process easier to do business with us. But if your budget hugely changes or something, then just, let your rep know, and we'll accommodate. But the goal is to kind of streamline this for you and for us. And we've been using this model and it seems to work pretty well. So that's why we kept it going and went with it. And we know within our systems and processes too, we can make it work better than the onesie-twosie models.
And to address the question about it, it seems odd to do a 5-year sub to own for content that hasn't come out yet. So we're paying for content that hasn't been released yet.
No, you buy it each.
Yeah,
It's
you're
each
paying year by year.
Yeah, pay. It's
So-
like a sub. It works like not paying advance. You don't pay it in advance. It's not like a payment plan.
The only change I've been pricing, to be honest with you all, I've been pricing, and Susan has been kindly approving, keeping your spend level. If you were doing the one-time purchases each year over year, I've been pricing these bundles to match that, so that you're not really losing anything at all in terms of overall price increase. But the only change is that you're committing for 5 years before you have the ownership. But as Susan said, if that's a problem, you just let us know.
If it's okay, I have just two more questions. Can you tell me what the benefit is for the ownership model if you are not successful about turning everything into a system like Portico that would offer, discovery and metadata integration? What would be the incentive for anybody to own this data?
But we have, so with the F1 code, the content delivery, we have lots of customers who do that every year, so that they have the data from us. So again, now, is that a true hosted environment? No. But it is that you have a copy of the content and you do have a preserved copy of it. We are looking at, and I don't know, this is, and tell me if my view is I'm being too Pollyannish, but I just don't see a scenario where the hosted environment goes down. even if a wild card, that the ProQuest hosted environment goes down, that means Amazon cloud just blows up totally everywhere in the world, because we're so distributed around the world that it just, even like Internet Archive, I think that has one backup with the Wellcome Trust that went down, but ours is so distributed. Our tech, now this is according to our tech guys, that wouldn't happen here. The only other thing could be if, let's say, ProQuest was sold and someone took it, then we could take that, someone's going to buy it for $1. Let's say worst case, right? And they would keep the content because that's what they're buying. And the hosted environment is what we do, frankly, adding the metadata and the hosted environment. So I really don't see that scenario, but I do take your point, and we are having those discussions. So I guess that's the, an answer now. Even then, Portico, if you look at some of the insight products that really have it's most of the metadata is in the, what we call the web app environment. If you're just doing something straight up like hearings, that's more straightforward. But if you're looking at a legislative history, that's really nested in that web app. And even then, we would have to replicate 100% of our hosted environment in Portico. And that's not necessarily a capability they even have. So we've been having those discussions. Now, if you have a straight, here's your newspaper and here's a newspaper page, or here's a magazine and here's a title, that model works really well. Here's a book. Here's one, archival closed file. That works. But for our government content, it's kind of a different animal. And we'd have to think about how could you replicate that hosted environment there. And we've talked about key codes and things that we could turn on that would turn on our hosted environment. And that would be, again, that administrator role where even if someone purchased ProQuest in the future or any trigger event, then that hosted environment would stay on and they could administer it. So those are the kinds of discussions that we're having now, and we need the tech teams to work out how that would work.
And real quick, another question. I think this might be for Corey, actually, or Teresa, if she's on the call. Consortium manager right now has up for everybody's renewal, July renewals, congressional on an executive base. So I'm not sure what everybody should do with that in consortium manager at this moment.
I wouldn't change that. You don't have to change a thing. So as Andrew just said, we know that if you have the congressional base through NELCO and it's notated in our system, and we just have a notation called indirect versus direct, that we're supplying it direct, it's through NELCO, that's fine. And essentially, if you choose to purchase the full, let's say the full collection level or the ProQuest government level, then essentially what we do in the pricing, our pricing team takes your CSFs and it takes all your subscriptions into account, and it lowers the price of, let's say, ProQuest Government Docs All, and it lowers the price because you already have that as your subscription or your CSF. So you're not double paying for that at all. So I would encourage you to stay with NELCO, because you're already there. You've already agreed, that that's what you want to do, and that's a value you get through NELCO. And I don't see why you need to change that.
So the price that's in consortium manager right now is a subscription price for the year for congressional executive base.
Correct.
And if any of the Nelco members wanted to switch over to whatever you're calling the complete or all package.
Right. You don't have to switch. Okay. You can, how do I say this? You don't have to switch. You can stay with Nelco, and we have the price that you're paying Nelco. And essentially, when you take the other, let's say ProQuest, government, docs, all the discipline level, essentially we credit you for that amount that you're already paying Nelco. So you're not going to double pay it. And your total subscription price nets out or credits that amount off.
Right.
Okay. So I would stay, again, that's why I would stay with Nelco, and then kind of it's on top, but credited against what you're paying Nelco. So you don't need to make a switch. You can make a choice to add on and get credit back for what you pay Nelco. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
I get it now.
Okay.
You're basically prorating the rest of whatever.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. But
Um,
I don't know, our pricing team has another way of explaining it. So there's like,
And
credit
in
back,
some
but
cases too, like in the case of Harvard, there's so much ownership across the board on the different subscriptions we're offering. I haven't even done pricing with you guys yet, but we can bundle even more than GovDocs together. And honestly, the ownership plugs in at such a high level for some of these accounts that are on this call that, like Susan was saying, that pricing is really, really favorable because of that ownership that you've been doing year over year. But we can talk about that offline. And again, everybody's different, unfortunately, for my brain, but that's okay. I'm here to help you through it.
we're trying to be, fair to everybody. And we worked really hard with our pricing team to say, if you've purchased or you have CSFs and you have subscriptions, that we do take that into account and credit that amount back, so that we're not going to double, have you pay twice for the same content. And it becomes very favorable when you move to, let's say, government. I'm saying the government docs all just because it's the easiest one to explain, that the pricing becomes very favorable because we take that into account.
Susan, this is Teresa from Nelco.
Uh-huh. Hi, Teresa.
I have a question. So the subscriptions that go through Nelco through you, what I understand you saying is if the library subscribe through Nelco, you're taking that total spend and deducting it from the total product that they're purchasing. But what if they do purchase the total product? What happens the following subscription year? Are
They just continue to stay the way you are.
okay?
You don't need to change at all. Because see, our system shows that even if you're buying that mega or mega, whatever, which one it goes, structure, our system still says that you have the congressional base indirect through Nelco.
Okay.
And that's inside the subjects and collection and discipline level. So our system knows that. So nothing needs to change.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We are right at the end of the hour that we had allotted for this time. I see that Mary had dropped her email address in the chat. So I just want to thank the folks from ProQuest that came on here to talk us through some of this. If you have questions, reach out to them. If you have Nelco specific and how it relates to your product questions, reach out to Teresa or myself. Thanks again. Thanks to everybody that attended.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.